Alrighty, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of season 3 of GameSense. We're all wicked excited to be here once again. We hope that you are too to watch us. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Symbotic, not the one that Karthik's a part of. This is a company in Massachusetts that does warehouse automation. Ty and I both work there, and they've been a great supporter of GameSense over the last few years. So if you want to learn more about them, go to symbotic.com. All right, so first off, let's introduce everybody here as part of the show. Behind the scenes, we've got Ruth and Stephanie. And here on set with me tonight is Evan Morrison, Naveed Shaffa, Ty Tremblay,
hey guys,
and our special guest, Karthik. Karthik, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey guys, I am Karthik. I'm the lead mentor for Team 1114. Been doing that since about 2004. Started doing first in 1998. And for my day job, I'm the global competition manager for Vex Robotics.
Wow, sweet. That's a cool title, actually. All right, so we're going to be doing our show for about an hour, until about 10 o'clock Eastern. After our show, we normally do a 20 to 30 minute Q&A with the people in the Twitch TV chat. So if you'd like to ask us a question and hear us answer it on air after the show, go to our Twitch TV chat and type !Q followed by your question. Then our chat bot will automatically pull the question in and send it to us. And if we like it, we'll answer it on air. Our last thing is a disclaimer. We like to say that we don't take ourselves too seriously, and we hope that you don't either. Have fun, and if you don't like what we said, go out there and prove us wrong. This week on the show, we're going to discuss how teams and strategies are improving as we continue to play Stronghold this year, how close the elimination matches are, and why that is, and we're going to touch a little bit about how low robots versus high robots are going to play out. All right, but first, let's go around the horn with one observation from everybody here on set from week 2. Karthik, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I guess I'll just start with first of all, thanks to the guys at the Blue Alliance for just having awesome stats out there. So This season right now, the average robot is averaging 0.5 goals in the low goal, 0.3 in the high goal. And so boulder scoring is about 9.6% of all scoring in matches. And in the elims, it shoots up super high because teams are averaging 1.1 low goal, 0.6 in the high, and boulder scoring is about 14% of the matches. So my observation right now is that there's a lot more that's going to happen in this game. So what we're seeing right now at the tip of the iceberg, but right now, boulder scoring is, well, putrid.
I think we're going to touch on that later on in the show as well. That's some pretty insightful statistics right there. Ty, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you saw?
So I got to watch 19 matches, all 19 of which was from behind the glass when I was coaching. But I found that finding that third partner is absolutely crucial. Having someone that can clear out 3 or 4 defenses for you and let you focus on the cycling is really clutch. And then having someone that isn't reliable can really hamper your chances at winning your event.
Yeah, I think, Naveed, what are your sights from this past week?
Yeah, to follow up with Ty, dead robots kill playoffs. And I know that sounds pretty obvious, but in this game, if your third robot is dead and can't make it up onto the batter to challenge, or more importantly, finish off a capture, that's going to usually, in a lot of cases, throw a match. So it's important to make sure that while robots are seeing a lot of wear, that you know when to put in a backup robot.
All right, cool. That's good news. Evan, what do you see from this past week?
Well, I think playoffs are some of the most intense that we've seen in several years across the board, and I'm really excited to see that it kind of doesn't matter what level of competition it is. The playoffs are just an all-out blast. So it's pretty cool to see as the competition increases, the excitement level of playoffs goes with it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think Karthik's right that we got a lot of room to grow, but I got to say, I like watching these playoff matches. And right now, at least how the game plays out, breaches and captures are happening more and more quickly. Getting your tower down to 8 is happening more quickly. So I think Karthik's 100% right that we're going to see a lot of room to grow in the ball scores that come out of elimination matches going on in Stronghold this year. So, all right. So we're going to head on to our first topic. This is going to be a really quick one. Let's just talk a little bit about the low bar and the change to that this past year and this past week and how it may have affected things. Ty, do you want to just start us off real quick?
Yeah, everybody that had a shooter, it was immediately destroyed. I don't know what happened. The low bar just went out and it like purposely dove into the robots and tangled up all their shooters, and nobody can shoot. So I think that's why the high goal scoring was so low. No, but really, like,
I sense some sarcasm.
But really, I think first, people will always find ways to, they'll always find ways to doubt what's happening, and I think first found a good solution. The only thing I'm not a huge fan of is if you roll the ball just right, you can get it stuck inside the low bar curtain, which can be a pain when you're trying to come back from the courtyard. But other than that, I think it was a non-factor, and we didn't have any more broken or torn this week.
Yeah, I think that's kind of true. So everybody else, I think we were all watching events or at events this week. What did you guys see with regard to that? Did anybody's robots get hung up by it? I know that some teams definitely were thinking about it as an issue.
I know in Ontario the new low bar flaps didn't actually make it up to Canada, and they actually said that in the team update that international events might not expect it. So we just
saw that duct tape.
Yeah, so basically our low bar fabric was just Gorilla Tape, and it worked. So and I think it was kind of like probably the right decision, because if it had have showed up in the middle of the event, it probably would have been weird for teams to get this new element in the middle of an event. But I think I was really happy with how the FTAs and First Canada handled it, and they made a good solution out of what could have been an awkward situation.
Yeah, I noticed at least once with 1024 kilobytes in Tippecanoe District that one of the flaps actually dragged across the top of the robot and pulled a ball out of their catapult. So there was definitely some of those effects that people were worried about in corner cases, but it really didn't affect them at all. I mean, #1 seed and champions of the event with 1747, so they were able to make it work, and I think while they can low bar, it wasn't their preferred path anyway. So I didn't hear of any reports of the low bar flaps getting horribly, terribly damaged, or the new ones. So I think overall it was kind of a much ado about nothing, but we'll see as time goes on. I'm sure somebody will find something to complain about.
Yeah, I think there definitely were some corner cases, or not to say corner cases, not to belittle the teams that did have impact. I think it was not, it wasn't great that it had to change. I think that overall the change was good. I did hear from Alamo that they ended up pulling the stuff off of the low bar stuff off of the thing. I don't know the full details about that, but I was at an event all weekend, and we didn't have any major issues. We just sort of adjusted some zip ties. But I mean, I think that there's a lot of people that I think it was not as big a deal as it could have been, but it's not a deal as it also could have been. That's yes. Circular logic is circular, but
exactly. Yeah, and I definitely get people being concerned about it, because if you think of this game like the game rules as a contract, that's the way that I've always kind of seen it is, teams are expected to play by the rules. However, when the rules start becoming a moving target, it's not exactly a situation that you're going to be happy about, especially once your robots are already in a bag and you don't get access to them. Now, it turned out this one was kind of a non-issue for most, but for anyone who it was an issue for, that's a huge thing, because you built your robot to play a game that has now changed.
Yeah, I would ask you, Karthik, how you guys deal with changes like this when you do the Vector Box competition, but I can't really think of one. So,
well, I mean, one of the things we talk about is like there has to be a real reason for us to make an in-season rule change. So now, we have this huge luxury because we got a 12-month build season, so we can figure stuff out. We always release our rules at the end of April, but we say that they're kind of fungible until mid-June. But for us to do a mid-season rule change past mid-June, it's basically got to be for a safety issue, because at that point, yes, there's this contract here, but safety is going to be the utmost priority. But other than that, there isn't going to be a change. So, like, for example, like the change that FRC made this year going against that Q&A, now disallowing the 60-foot camera poles. I mean, it makes total sense. That's just not safe. That was just kind of weird and stuff. So as much as it would frustrate me if I was a team who'd plan my strategy around that, at the end of the day, you just can't have cameras falling from 60 feet high onto kids' heads. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Evan, did you have something to say before we move on?
I don't remember what it was.
Okay. All right. Well, we found one thing that was wrong. The low bar has caused temporary memory loss here. All right. So with that out of the way, let's talk about all these crazy matches we saw this weekend, all across the world, all across North America, and some in Israel as well. Karthik, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the cool matches that you saw from all the good teams up in the Great White North in Ontario?
I mean, we had GTR East was just, we knew it was going to be a show because of the teams that were up there. Having 118 come up to an already strong region meant things were going to be at a pretty high level, and they really were. It was like it's almost indescribable what it felt like in the elimination rounds there. But we had 6 teams that I thought were playing at a world-class level. 2013, who was very strong.
They were on fire.
They were super strong in 2014, had a bit of an off year last year, but man, they came out strong this year. And first of all, it was almost terrifying when they came out for a match because, like, if they missed, like, there was a chance that your head was going to be ripped off by their shot.
It's a laser beam.
No joke, they fired a ball that went somewhere between 80 and 100 feet. Like, it just went clean over the tower and all the way to the concession stand. So they were dialed in really early on. 610, no surprise, was super consistent. They have the ability to shoot high, but they focused on the low goal, and then their hang was the most consistent hanger there. They also had that nice little, ability to shoot while hanging, and so they were a team to be reckoned with. 1241, despite them winning the World Championship in 2013, I think this is the best robot they've ever had.
I agree.
And I mean, they're a team that totally benefited from the decision to go tall because it just made shooting that much easier. And as such, they went from a team who probably would have been like a top 50 team in the world to right now, possibly a top 10 team. Like, that's how good they were. So that was amazing. I don't really want to talk about our robot because that's just kind of weird, but we had a good show, but probably not good by our own standards. But and then there was 118, who was just, if you didn't pay attention to them, they put 9 balls up in the high goal.
Yeah.
So they were just running around doing crazy 118 things. And then the team to talk about is 2056, who I think right now is probably the best team in the world. I didn't get to see enough of CVR to see if the Poops or 1678 were up at their level, but man, 2056 was just fire. It was just amazing to watch them come over the outer works and just like spend a second locking on and boom, fire. And it just didn't matter what they fired from. It was such a nice shot. They were in qualification rounds, 90% in teleop was their shooting percentage. And that's 90%, which they were taking about, 6.5 shots a match.
Right.
So they were, I mean, I saw some guy post on Chief today. It's like, oh yeah, our team's doing about 6 cycles a match. It's like, oh, you are? You're better than 2056. Good little random team from Michigan.
Wow.
2056 was so good. And it was one of those things where there was just this buzz around the event where people who'd never even seen robotics events were just like, wow, that one robot is much better than everyone else. And it was true. But I guess the crazy thing that we also saw was, despite them being that good, this game, even if you're that good, the gap between the top 1% and the top 10%, it's not that huge. As in past years, it's been magnificent. So that'll be something that'll be interesting to watch.
It's definitely the first year in a while where I actually feel like, even though the first alliance almost always has an edge, I think it feels like there is a strong enough chance for that 8th seed to have a shot going into the first quarterfinal match.
2056 and 118, in past games, if you took teams from those percentile ranks and combined them on the number 1 alliance, they should have embarrassed everyone. But just the nature of this year's game was it just made things seem a lot closer. And so even though they were the best alliance by far, and they were definitely better than our alliance, but we were able to keep it really close. And that says something about the strategic nature of this game and how, dominance isn't... I guess it's probably similar to what we saw in 2007, where even if you had the 2 best, ring or 2 placing robots in that game, it was still close matchups. And I think that's what we're going to see throughout the season.
Yeah. So I don't think we can avoid talking about 1114 because they, as you say, are one of the best teams. Evan, you probably watched their matches. Do you want to speak a little bit about how they performed?
I watched several, and I think there was market improvement between practice day and Friday, and then Friday and Saturday. And certainly, you could tell that the robot wasn't where they would want it to be, just in terms of shot percentage and stuff like that. But It's hard to get away from the fact that it's still probably one of the best robots in the world, and seeing that hanger work is just phenomenal. It looked to me like 1114 and 148 had very similar hangers. Hard to tell from the pictures if they were designed concurrently or if they were just independent. But there's a lot of subtle things about the robot and the way that it works and the strategy that they play that I don't think are going to be visible until we get to higher and higher levels of play at championship. There usually weren't more than one. I don't think there actually was ever more than one robot hanging on a tower. But when you start getting to that, the way that 1114 hangs is going to be crucially important.
Well, and that was definitely the thought behind going with the harder style of hang like that. We were thinking that, going towards championship, you really want to be able to facilitate. It's one of the things that we talked about as a team. You want to be able to facilitate strong alliances by making it easier for your partners to do what they're good at. So we wanted to take up the smallest footprint as possible. So we just kind of moved our footprint out. And the hangers are very similar between us and 148. We kind of had the concept, and we showed it to 148 because they punched our sheet metal out, and they're like, "Whoa, this is kind of cool. Can we do?" And we're like, "Yeah, go ahead." And then by far, they refined it way faster than we were. Like week 4 or 5, they showed us a video of them going up, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, we can't do that." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Yeah, we just can't do that yet." So it was nice for us to actually get that working at the regional and all. It went through a bunch of iterations. I mean, it started off as being powered by gas shocks, and then there was a worm gearbox design, then 750 pros, and eventually we started PTOing off the drive, and that was the trick. And it's we definitely, it's inspired a lot by how we hung in 2010, and we hope that we chose the right strategy because we're hoping that there's going to be a lot of scaling going on a championship, and we'd like to be a part of a nice 3-scale alliance.
Cool. Well, I think we've talked a good amount about Toronto specifically. Naveed, you watched this other event with some pretty good teams there. I think it was Central Valley.
West Coast, Best Coast.
Yeah, right.
Wait, we don't talk about those guys, right?
No, of course not.
Never.
No, West Coast shun them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, CVR was very competitive at the high levels of play. There wasn't that as deep of a margin, I would say, as we saw throughout GTR East, but some really strong teams to pull together those lower seed alliances, especially. But 254, 1678, they paired up as everybody expected, and just really rolled face. I mean, they broke the high score that 1114 or 118 and 2056 set the day before at 210, and I think that while neither of them were at 2056's level of shot accuracy right off the bat, they got tuned pretty fast, and it felt like a very different style of play. I mean, even though these alliances were putting up the same points and doing pretty much the same thing, it was kind of interesting to see that they were cycling relatively fast, but it felt like there was more focus on the shooting. And 1678 has this really neat feature that we hadn't seen before, where they're able to extend out their arm with where their shooter is and make their release point even higher. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about that because I thought it was sick. I thought,
yeah,
I have no idea how much it actually benefits them, if any at all. I think we're going to show a video of that happening in just a moment. I don't know if it actually helped, but it definitely looked super baller.
Yeah, and from chatting with Mike Corsetto a little bit, the main reason it does that isn't actually to get the shot over; it's to get the camera to look over any shot blocker that may be there. So it allows them to still use their really solid auto aim feature in the outer works, even if there's an array of noodles or a T-shirt or whatever you have on PVC sticks right in front of you. So because there's several robots, even low robots like 118 have demonstrated the ability to shoot over a tall blocker right in front of them, but if you're blocking the camera vision, you may not be able to make that shot. So some really clever design from 1678, combining the hanger with the ability to extend their their shooter up when it's tilted back at about 45-degree angle, and just getting all the little things right. And the crazy thing is that this is not nearly the best that we'll see from these two teams this year. Certainly the cheesy poofs, their shot accuracy was not where they would have wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of that was camera tracking versus mechanical or other software issues, but still well ahead of most of the rest of FRC. But when they get that thing going, it's going to be absolutely insane to watch.
Totally.
I want to mention one other thing too, is while I think teams are going to be able to nail that accuracy on these 1 or even 2 ball autos come World Championships, I think seeing this unique functionality that 1678 has there that puts them aside, as well as 1114's auto, I think that really shocked me right off the bat, because the first time I saw it, after they seemed to have trouble locking on with vision, the robot flew forward, slammed into the low goal, and deposited a ball. And I have a strong feeling that other teams, having seen that this last week, may consider putting something like that together for World Championships, because getting a ball in an auto is going to be crucial. And if you don't fire an auto come World Champs, it's going to be an issue. I mean, if you get 20, 30 points behind in this game, in most playoff matches, you aren't recovering from that.
Yeah, that's very true. So, go ahead. Let's talk any other stuff we want to talk about, these other events that happened. I know there are other events, like Orlando had a couple of really cool matches going on. I know that 148 premiered and won their regional as well. Evan, I think you have something to say.
Yeah, I've actually got 2 things now. But the first one is that the Tippecanoe district in Indiana, and there's some videos, I think all of playoffs are up online. Hands down, some of the best playoffs from quarterfinals through finals that we saw last weekend. Just the quality of play. I mean, let me put it this way. Quarterfinal 1, match 1, number 1 seed versus number 8 seed, both alliances breach and capture. Like, you didn't see that, I don't think, anywhere else, where your number 8 seed was capable of basically sticking it to a superpower number 1 seed and pushing them to the limit there. And so that was just, I know that region doesn't necessarily get a lot of views, and there's some really, really good high-level matches out of there. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was, 254 and Citrus weren't the only teams at Central Valley Regional. We saw, Greybots looked good, and Madtown looked good, and Madtown got to finals with a rookie team as the first-round pick, 58-17, with also a laser beam shot, very, very similar to Cybernome. So, it wasn't as much as we want to say, oh yeah, 254 and Citrus kind of went in there and walked away with the banner. Well, yeah, but they didn't. They had some really, really stiff competition too. And so just phenomenal play from California all around.
When it comes from a viewership perspective too, I think it's easy to downplay a little bit of that, because I'm going to be honest, the webcast was painful to watch. We had so many dominant teams at CVR, and then 3 different camera angles, and overlapping, a giant first logo on the side. It's I really want to watch these teams play, but it's hard to see where I'm supposed to be looking.
Yeah. One event I wanted to talk about a bit was Arkansas, actually, and it sounds like 3310 and 16 put on a pretty nice show there. And just looking at I haven't seen anything, so I'm going to be that guy, but just looking at the numbers there, it seems like there was definitely some power concentrated down there. So it's that was an unexpected surprise. So I guess not really when you consider the 3310 and 16. But
oh yeah. Can I ask? Is Arkansas the regional or the event that lost power, or was that?
Yes.
Okay.
That was Arkansas. Yeah.
So they did have a power concentration there for a while, and then it went away, and it came back. Or maybe we should call it Darkansas, but no, but sorry, no.
Francis, get off the show.
Oh no. All right. Well, so Karthik, I know that before we started the episode, you were chomping at the bit to talk about how this game is going to grow as time goes on. Do you want to start sort of talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the point concentration right now, basically, we're almost hitting a point where, in qualification matches, the team that crosses the most defenses wins. That's where the bulk of the points are coming, because there's so few people scoring. But defense scoring maxes because it's unlike boulder scoring. You just once you hit it, you've reached everything. You're not getting any more points. So we're getting into that weird situation in a lot of qual matches where both alliances are hitting the max breaching, and then like what's actually deciding the match. And so something really weird that's happening is if you actually have a robot that can do this stupid sally port or drawbridge, there's an extra 10 points you can get in there, and that's actually
1197.
Yeah,
Tor
it's a
bots.
valuable thing, and that'll help you seed high.
They do it in auto.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
really?
They do it in auto, and they got the #1 seed at the Los Angeles Regional, and they're a tall bot, and I believe they're so far the only tall bot to be a #1 seed, and it is beautiful to watch them sally port in auto. It's just so smooth.
At early season events, or at in some regions for the whole year because they won't ever figure out how to score a boulder. I mean, that ability, because crossing the defense, it's like you're basically looking at diminishing returns at a certain point, but that's the place where you can differentiate and grab those extra points. So that's a strategic thing that I think a lot of people might, like the game's kind of, it stifles at a certain point, then it breaks open again once you have teams who can score.
Mm-hmm. On the note about 1197, I want to know what the heck happened. They went out week 1, they didn't even get picked, and then they're all of a sudden #1 seed the next week and win the event. It's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't actually watch any of their week 1 performance, so hard to say other than they looked good in LA and they earned themselves a bid to champs. Rightfully so. Just, it's a great machine. And they bucked the trend of the low bar. I mean, they supplemented. They basically said, well, we won't low bar, but we'll be able to sally port, and I think they can drawbridge too, probably not in auto. And it paid off. Huge.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, as sort of going back to what Karthik was talking about. There's a lot of room for high ball scoring to go, and there's a lot of obviously point room to go as we go up, especially in the elimination rounds. So when do you think this is going to happen? Do you think this is going to be a thing that most teams are going to be able to conquer? Because it is only week 2, even though we've had 3 weeks of competition. So maybe to me, it just feels like there's a lot of teams that can't shoot well or can't shoot accurately. What do you guys think about that? Do you think there's hope for everybody else to actually start scoring a lot of points?
No, I mean,
well, there it is.
No.
Let's be realistic. Most of FRC still only plays one event.
That's very true.
That's that's the thing. Like we often get caught in our bubbles of being on teams who really go at this, but most teams just play one event, and those teams, I mean, a lot of them are done already. So no, they're definitely not going to score the high goal. I think that as the game evolves, you get the district championships, you get the last final world championship. It's going to be a thing, but teams made design decisions this year that are going to make it much harder for them to score on the high goal. So it's natural that the scoring is going to be depressed compared to what it could be if not everyone was infatuated with the low bar.
So is this kind of like what you mean by when you said you're terrified by the number of people that go low?
Absolutely. Like teams in general, struggle to play the FRC challenges. It's difficult. So when you add an extra size constraint, like you think about every year how so many teams struggle to, elevate a ball or pick up a ball with the normal constraints, but then you give them a new constraint of having to be under, 16 inches. That makes it so much harder. So this artificial constraint that teams took upon themselves, which realistically probably shouldn't have been done by most teams, just made life so much easier. And so it's frustrating to see a team who designs a low bar only robot, then comes out there and realizes, wait, everyone's breaching. I've only got 9 more matches now for the rest of my season, and I'm not going to do anything. So, just looking at the stats in Ontario, like they're just the amount. This is like a high end event, and the amount of zeros on this spreadsheet for high goals is astonishing.
Yeah, but by the same token, when you get into eliminations, the capture is worth 25 points, right? So if you're in the early weeks, if you're just a low bar only robot, if you're a low bar robot that only low goals, you can be, you can get yourself, I know 319 was able to get 7 low goal cycles in a match, but getting that capture is what really wins you the events in these, week 1, 2, 3 events.
And my counter to that, Ty, is at GTR Central with 49 at GTR East with 49 teams, only 13 average more than one low goal a match.
Mm-hmm.
So like, teams weren't. There were so many teams who just didn't have we're talking about high goals. We had teams who didn't have the ability to low goal because they couldn't intake a ball, but they had made the decision to go low. And I think that a lot of teams had stars in their eyes about, we have to go under the low bar, not realizing that was such a huge trade-off. And I think that's what the issue came down to. Teams didn't realize what a difficult trade. Was it a valuable trade-off? If you can pull it off, absolutely. As you said, you can cycle so quickly through that low bar and you can do some real damage, if you play it efficiently. And I think there's a lot of teams out there. I think 2,200 in week 1, week 0.5 was a great example.
Yeah.
They were just low bar, low goal, hang, and they did their things right. But I think that a lot of teams who just kind of figured, we'll go under the low bar and we'll be able to shoot. But it's here, we're a team that kind of makes the elimination rounds once a season kind of thing, maybe doesn't. It's they had stars in their eyes and they bit off more than they could chew. The low bar absolutely was the right strategy for, high-end teams with the resources to put something together. But that's not most of FRC. I think a lot of teams walked into a trap where I think that if they had built, and I'm not saying you have to build a robot to full height, but if if you just kind of build a robot similar in form factor what we had with Simbot Jordan back in 2012, you could still be low to the ground, still cross these defenses without worried about flipping over, but it makes such a easier shot at the high goal, and also you have more flexibility in what you can do for playing defense.
I think Madtown 1323 is the perfect example of this. Their robot is not low bar capable, or at least I didn't see them go under the low bar at the event, and their shooter is certainly positioned above the low bar height restriction, but it's still fairly low. It's maybe half of maximum height, and they made it work phenomenally well. They have some shot tuning left to do, but it certainly was one of the top high goal shooting robots at the event, and they carried them to finals as the Alliance captain. And so, there's a design space in there between low bar capable and maximum height, where it opens up your options so much. And I think we're seeing the impacts of that low bar decision for a lot of teams, and just the sheer dearth of scales this year, right? The only teams that are really scaling that are the top teams. We are seeing very few outside of the top sort of upper echelon.
We're still around 10%, right? If I recall correctly, I saw early on, I want to say week 1, it was somewhere around 7-8%. I'm spitballing right now, but it's low. Percent of matches where a scale occurred, period.
Oh, I think it was lower than that, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But yeah, and to go back to what Karthik was talking about, I think that, and this is kind of an awkward thing, is that the fact that a lot of teams don't have a lot of resources led them to build robots because they know that they can't necessarily depend on their partners to get the breach for them, and the breach is important when it comes to ranking high. But because they did this, they ended up being in a position where they couldn't play the game to the fullest potential. So they became the thing they tried to avoid in many respects, and I think you hit the nail on the head that you'll see, I know that there were some folks I spoke with after they saw your comment on Chief Delphi about how surprised you were there were so many low robots, and then saw that the robot your team built was a low bot. They're like, what does that, what does that mean? It's because 1114 has the resources they have the brain power and they have the experience to build a wicked good robot that can be low. Not everybody can do that. In fact, most people can't.
I won't lie. It's definitely crossed my mind a couple times to wonder. It's man, if we had not gone low, what could we be doing right now? Could we? So it's, we made the decision for a multitude of reasons. I don't regret it, but there is some talk. I just think that if we can kind of see that perspective of, what could we have done?
Yeah,
man, there's a lot of teams who are probably in that, the teams who are doing this, who are the 0 to 25th percentile. It's I just feel bad for you right now. I wish someone had given you the advice during the season. But those teams who are in the 50th to 75th percentile, man, they could have made an easy jump up into the 90th percentile by going high, possibly. Maybe not, I don't know. But I just think there's a lot of teams that really could have benefited by not going low. And especially once the word got out that there were so many low bar teams, that, you know, you always want to be in a niche. You don't want to be the follower here. So I just think that, you know, like 1241 is going to stand out this year as a team who was a team that's, you know, normally in like the top, you know, 80-90% of robots, but like this year, like, man, they are so good. And like, I'm not just saying that because they were on our alliance, but they were just like, it was just fun to watch them, just like, especially on practice day when they weren't even thinking about breaching, just picking up ball after ball and just boom, boom, boom.
They're definitely the best tall bot.
Yep, I agree with that. Now I will say that I did see some robots that go into the low bar and manage to make it work without having to shoot high. You know, I know that this is a little biased because I was at the WPI district this weekend, but 839, who eventually won the event, was at some points they would score 8 or 9 balls in the low goal, and they would be able to capture in qualification rounds. You know,
well, I mean, going low and being a low goal scoring robot, that's a totally different calculus to look at, because they've made the trade off to go low, and they recognize they have to give something up to do that, and so they gave up high goal shooting. So, I mean, it goes like that whole thing that West Coast Products put out with their MCC robot, like that. Yeah, that's a total, like, if you're going to go low and you want to get the benefit of the easier breaching and the easier cycling, and then you give up the high goal, then you can do great stuff. I mean, 610, who can shoot high, but they just focused on low goals, and there was just some matches where they just they pulverized the field going back and forth under that low bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and we saw 319. I'm going to throw it to Ty, right? At the North Shore district, they have a high goal shooter, but it wasn't up to the level that it was worth the time and the missed shots to take the high goal, and so they switched to an entirely low goal strategy for playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that's because, especially for these early weeks, if you can't capture the tower and shoot high, then you shouldn't be shooting high. Period. Like if you have to have an alliance that is capable of capturing the tower if you want to ensure your way through eliminations and through and to the win. And if shooting high means that you risk that capture, then there's almost no point, especially at a lower competition field like the competition we were at. I mean, at Greater Toronto East, 319 would not have been able to compete with 118 and 2056.
You never know. No,
well,
I will argue. Go ahead.
Well, yes and no, Ty, because again, 610 was pretty much only low goal. They would do their shot while they were hanging, and I mean they were on. You know, they got to the semifinals and gave us a tough matchup before penalties.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that sort of very nicely leads us right into our next sort of topic about how the elimination matches are very close if you've got similarly paired alliances. Naveed, do you want to lead us off with this?
Yeah. So while it seems from like an anecdotal perspective, just watching matches, that the matches themselves are closer, I think it's interesting to note that going into playoffs, the number one alliance still is at about a 70% chance of winning events, all the way up from week half to week 2. Every event that's been played so far, the number one alliance, 68% chance of winning an event, which is huge. I mean, that you're talking about any other seed, you're at less than a 7.5% chance of winning the event. And statistically, those still aren't great odds. It's curious to see, though, how close those match scores get, including those foul points, and that it gives us the feeling as a spectator of these matches having a bigger chance to swing than before. And I haven't done the math yet, but I would argue that there's probably more tiebreaker matches, more rounds and playoffs going to 3 than in the past. But that's something I'd like to look into.
That is interesting, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is that if you're at an event, the matches are generally close if you play against other alliances that are of a similar makeup to yourself, right? So we saw that at especially at GTR, we had two robots in each alliance could shoot high very well. Everybody could breach very well. The matches were very close. We saw at other events that there were alliances that mostly played the low goal. They mostly put balls in the low goal, and if you have similar alliance on each side, you end up with a very similar makeup. And I think this kind of goes back to what Karthik was saying at the very beginning, which is that we have a lot of room to grow in this game. There's a lot of headroom to grow, and most of your points are still decided by these kind of automatic points you get for playing the game, breaches, captures, and going over defenses.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that the huge points boost that you get from the breach and the capture are also kind of integral to this the nature of this game. And so you'll look at finals match or playoffs match scores, and especially the ones that go to 3 matches. The final scores on several of them are usually separated by about 20 to 25 points. And usually that's the result of, in any particular match, one alliance did or did not get a breach or a capture. And it's so you'll see alliances that if they know they're behind, they're going to make desperate moves to try and get that capture, because they know that even if they run out of time getting the capture, if they don't get it, they're losing anyway. And so, I saw it at WPI. I saw it at Toronto, where there's teams that are Central Valley. I think 973 made a last-minute desperate attempt in their semifinal match number 3, and it resulted in Greybots not getting on the batter in time to get the capture, which would have won them the match, unfortunately for them. But it's all about that and having a dead third partner sometimes, or even a dead any robot, right, can just break a match, because right then and there, if they don't come back to life and get over to the batter, you're out 25 points potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely gargantuan, especially considering how close things are with this game here. So let's see. So we have it in the notes on our little chat here. There's this thing about AstroTurf. Who put that in there?
I did, and I hate to open the can of worms, but I think it's worth discussing at least.
Then why did you put it in the document? Huh?
It is important. So at the Columbus district, in the Peachtree region, there was AstroTurf that was laid down on the area. They laid the carpet down on top of the AstroTurf, so it was bubbling. The carpet itself wasn't settled right, and it led to a lot more teams browning out just driving in a match. And they also had a lot of comms issues there. And that kind of gets back over to seeing what the playoffs are like when you've got 1 or 2 dead robots on your alliance. And I think as we get further into the season, as a bunch of these robots see much more wear and tear, I think unfortunately there are going to be a higher number of playoff matches where having a dead robot is a very realistic possibility. And I think it's something that teams are going to have to prepare for. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do to prepare for it, but just be aware that in this game, you really have to be ready to shift your strategies.
Yeah, that's true. So as we see it now, we see that these alliances, a lot of them are 2, we'll say, primary scoring robots, and 1 robot that's doing a little bit of breaching and a little bit of defending. What do we think is going to change as the weeks go on? Like, is that third robot going to continue to play defense, good, bad, or indifferent, or is that robot going to find a new role on an alliance? I kind of want Karthik to give his opinion on this first.
Oh, I think they're going to be playing defense.
Yeah.
I just think that the amount of points you could deny is greater than the amount of points that they're going to be able to score. And it's one of those things where if you just let the other alliance just be, unimpeded on the offensive end, they will just make mincemeat out of you. Just like the thought of 2056 and 118 being able to run free. Like,
yeah,
I mean, in the match that probably led 2056 to pick 118 on Saturday morning, 118 just had a match where they were completely untouched and put up 9 in the high goal, and it was just so impressive. And I mean, like, it's the same thing. If you leave 1241 undefended and they just start once the breach is done and they can just start poaching balls out of the secret passage as they come rolling out, they will make mincemeat of you. They will just that's one of the big things. If you don't have anyone back there to defend, they're gonna just go steal balls from the secret passage over and over and over again. So there's no cycling that's happening. So it's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, and I think that's really the kicker to why at high levels of play, even Einstein, there's got to be a defensive robot, because nobody wants to be going toe to toe on just cycling alone. When you can have a robot back there that's protecting your secret passage, and even if they're not actually blocking any shots or preventing any shots from going in, if they're slowing them down by forcing them to make extra maneuvers, and get lined up in the outer works and make sure they're in the outer works, it's a benefit to your alliance that they may or may not be able to provide. That being said, I do still think that a 3-cycler strategy is viable up to the point where you get the 8 balls in. And once you've got the capture in, then that defensive, that third cycler loses so much utility, because then they're kind of just adding points that they should be denying.
Evan, do you think? Go ahead, Karthik.
Well, there's also a thing, because if you complete that, if you kill that tower early, it's almost like an intimidation thing. When you look up at the score and you're like, oh shoot, we got to do some catch up there. So, there's definitely something to be said about a third partner that can play both roles and start the match out and do okay, let's just hit our first hit our auto ball, make sure it's in, clean up a mess, and then go. It's there's some someone who can play a two-way game is obviously going to be super valuable. But I mean, that's just common sense.
Yeah, I guess the question is does that alliance exist at the regional level? And I don't think it really does.
No,
maybe Waterloo we could see, but even still, probably not.
No offense to Waterloo.
Waterloo's a 30-team event. The back end is
that's true. Yeah,
like Francis and I were there in 2005, where the back end didn't even exist.
Yep.
I was going to add on that note, though, when we start seeing the potential for this third robot to complete a cycling alliance, you start running into the issue of a crowded courtyard and having to cross similar defenses, and even 2 robots working together well orchestrated, whether it be 2056-118 or 254-1678, there were times where they slowed down each other's cycle times.
Yeah. Absolutely. You see, and a lot of times you end up that ends up being one robot goes through the low bar and the other one takes the other defenses. But you start getting crowded in there, and even we've noticed even towards the end of the match, in that last 30 seconds, when teams are coming back to get the challenge, that there can be just absolute chaos trying to get everybody to the side of the batter that they're trying to get to, and around the middle, and not getting in each other's way.
Yeah.
And I have one comment on our sort of current topic, which is actually about breaking robots, and because of the capture aspect of that, you lose your third partner or any robot, and you can't get the capture. I really believe that the 4th robot this year at championships on those alliances is going to be the most utilized this year than any other year, just because this game is so rough on alliances. I mean, we saw at the Glacier Peak event this past weekend, that the first 2 finals matches, the Red Alliance ran 2 robots. In the first match, it was their alliance captain that sat out, which they lost barely. And in the second match, it was their third robot that they sat out, and then they ended up taking a substitute, and they won the event. And that was in large part due to the fact that neither alliance was really capable of consistently capturing. But the fact of the matter is, robots are breaking down, and having the ability to just put somebody in that can drive is huge if you need a time to fix a robot.
Yeah, that third robot really is going to be there to slow the other alliance down. Well, to cross in auto, slow the other alliance down, and then get on the batter for the capture. And if any of those 3 don't happen, then your chance of winning in the playoffs is severely damaged. In the finals, I think, or in one of our matches at North Shore, we found out that 6161 had this problem where they'd throw a chain every now and then, and it happened right as they were sitting there at the moat getting ready to go over, and 319 actually tried to go through and push them over the moat ourselves, because we had to get that breach, and maybe if we pushed them hard enough, we could break that chain loose and have them get onto the capture. but it didn't actually end up happening. And just sitting there and having to fix chains in between matches is brutal, and that fourth robot is going to be really, really helpful if you can swap them out during champs.
So is this my only question about this? Is this game actually rougher on robots than like 2K14, 2014?
Yes.
The game where you tried to kill each other? Okay. Well, how so?
Because the field is trying to kill you, not just other robots.
True enough.
Yeah. Instead of having one really defensive robot kill you in a particularly bad match, this robot is punching your wheels in the face every single time you try to breach. And if you're one of the higher end robots at an event, you can cross 4, 5, 6 times that in a match. And if you're in a district, then you're talking 10 to 12 match qualification matches plus 6 to 8 potentially playoff matches, and that's crazy. I mean, 319 broke 2 drivetrain chains. We actually turned all of the teeth off of one of our sprockets. We've got a lot of improvements that we're making to just make this thing bulletproof, because I mean, Stronghold is kicking these robots' butts.
There's something to be said. In the past, most teams would peak on Saturday because you just get better with practice, experience, or whatever. But I think that this year there's going to be some teams that peak on Friday and get worse on Saturday because their robots are just they're breaking down and things are popping. And
I feel bad for 125.
Right. But I mean, like 2056's Alliance, like they had to call in a backup bot just because their third robot just couldn't handle the abuse, and its Rhino treads just kind of went poof, and so.
Wow. Poof go to treads. All right. Well, I think we've talked about that for long enough. So let's move toward the end of the show here. So we like to do a little thing at the end of the show called shout-outs, where everybody shouts out to a team or a group that they want to highlight on the show. So, Evan, why don't you lead us off with who you are shouting out to this week?
All right. Well, since there's no California event this week, my shout-outs are going to 3990 Tech for Kids at the Tech Valley Regional. I don't personally know them, but I really, really like their robot. It's just a beautifully designed machine, a fantastic-looking catapult, and probably one of the sweetest hanging mechanisms I've seen. It's nothing super special. It's just a tube pink style elevator arm, but they've got these great latching hooks that should help them a lot because they just go up from the underside and clip on as opposed to trying to hook something over the top. So I'm pulling for them. I love the way that they build their robots. And my other shout out goes to 193 Mort Beta at Springside Chestnut Hill. They came so close to winning it at I want to say Hatboro Horsham. And they're one of the few teams that I really like the way that they do the solo drawbridge. They'll come back through, they hold their arm at just slightly above the ground, and they back off until the drawbridge just pops out of their drivetrain and hits the arm, put the arm down, and drive back through. And it's just unmistakable broken contact and super smooth. And I'm hoping to see them come away with a win because it's just a fantastic machine and fantastic driving.
Very cool. I wouldn't normally like to correct you, Evan, but in this case, it bears fruit. They were at the Mount Olive district.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yes. All right. So this week, my shout out is to everybody at the Utah Regional. Last year on GameSense, we made a note because for some reason the Utah Regional had crazy high scores across the board, and we couldn't quite figure out why because none of us were watching it, and there wasn't a lot of video available early. So I'm going to watch that this weekend and see what's up. I'm going to see if Utah is some sort of crazy high point gene or if it was a fluke from last year. But good luck to everybody competing there. So our ladies behind the scenes this week, Ruth is shouting out to all the rookies this year, especially Team 5803 Apex, which 3 of our members here are on. She says that there's tons and tons of rookies playing this week. And it's probably one of the strongest, we all think it's probably one of the strongest rookie classes we've seen. A lot of really high-level rookies here, and especially down in South Australia. So Steph is also shouting out to 5803. She's been wicked busy trying to get her team up and running because it's going to be a crazy weekend for their second district event in the Pacific Northwest. So, Naveed, why don't you go ahead and tell us your shout-outs for the week?
I got one shout-out this week, and mine has to go to 1648. one of the strongest teams in the Peachtree district, and they had quite a rough week one. Them, along with pretty much everybody else at Columbus, with the issues of not only having to drive over defenses but to drive over the carpet. They managed to walk out with district chairman's award, and I expect them to be on fire this week.
Hey, Navi, can we back up here for a second? Because this is actually my first time hearing about this AstroTurf.
Yeah.
Wait, was this on cheap at any point?
Yeah,
or?
I think it may have popped up a little bit, but I know that HQ was made aware of it, and basically what happened, they set up the field on top of the AstroTurf. The carpet was all bunched up, and they were like, well, the event has to go on, and we'll monitor it and see what we can do in the future. But between that and the comms issues, yeah, playoffs kind of sucked for a lot of those teams.
I feel like if this was at a more high-profile event, it would have just been a giant, stuff that comes out of our butt storm. Like
it's really unfortunate.
Well, this was a district, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was might have even been the first district in Peachtree. I believe
it was.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Not to side rail this too much, but it's one of those things about districts is that finding venues is important, and one of those things you got to check up on is if they have internet you can run a webcast with, and if they have a floor, I guess. But yeah, you're right. If this was in Toronto, we'd be wondering why it wasn't on ice. But no, we'd actually be wondering. we'd be saying a lot of different things. That's for sure.
Well, it wouldn't happen in Toronto.
That's true. I agree with that.
Anyways, good luck, 1648.
Cool. Ty, give us your shout out this week.
This week, my shout out goes out to 1124, playing at the UMass Dartmouth district. It's the only New England district. And unfortunately, one of their team members is sick and is going to have to, unfortunately, watch the event from remotely. And we're all pulling for you, Chris.
Sweet. That's very sweet of you, Ty. All right. Next up, Karthik. Who you shouting out to this week?
Big shout out to Team 4613 out in Australia, the newest member of Team IFI. Every Team IFI team who competed last weekend won a regional except for us. So that was a thing. But I'm excited to see, like the video they dropped with that turret was like, whoa.
Sweet.
So I want to see if they can live up to the high bar of hype that they've set for themselves. And then the other shout out is just want to say I'm going to my first ever New England district event this weekend. Myself and Paul Copioli will be bringing the Karthik and Paul show to the UMass Dartmouth event. So I think you guys want to check that one out. There's some pretty strong teams there. 78, 88, 246. Ty, you could probably tell me more.
195 is going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going tracks. The last time that they went tracks was in 2006, and they were a beast that year.
So will they make it back to Einstein? Are the tracks the magic?
Maybe. So now that you mentioned that, Karthik, let's say where we're going this week. Evan, Naveed, and Stephanie, you guys are going to which district in the PNW?
Central Washington University.
Cool.
In Ellensburg.
Awesome. Central Washington. Ruth's also going to be at UMass Dartmouth. She's going to be the lead queuer. Ty's working, and I will probably be relaxing because I had to run an event last week. But if you see any of the GameSense folks out there, don't be afraid to come say hello. We'd like to talk to all the people that watch the show. I won't speak for you, Karthik. I won't. You'll be busy, I'm sure. So, all right. So that brings us to the end of the show for now. I want to say a huge thank you to Karthik for coming on the show and doing this with us. It was a lot of fun to have you on once again after your first appearance in season 1.
Yeah, I'm always glad to come on and chat with you guys. It's always good to talk with people who know their stuff.
Cool, that's great. So for everybody else watching, we're going to take a very quick break. We're going to come back in a few minutes with a question and answer for us. If you have a question for us, something about the game you want us to answer, just type it in the Twitch chat, !Q, followed by your question, and our chat bot will pull it right in. And if we like it, we'll answer it on air. So we're going to talk more robots in just a few minutes, but for now, we're going to take a short break. So see you in a few seconds. Bye-bye, everybody. Okay, everybody, we are back. Thank you for taking that slight graphical issue. No big deal. So again, we're going to answer some questions with the Twitch chat. So if you're watching on Twitch, just type !Q, follow, and then your question, and then it'll go right to our chat bot. And if we like what you have to say, we'll answer it on air. So let's go with our first question of the evening here, coming up on screen right now. Do you think captures should scale with how many robots are on the field for an alliance? If an alliance only has 2 robots, should they be able to capture with only 2? Ooh, interesting. Who wants to take this one first?
No.
No.
There we go.
All right, next question.
I think the simple answer is sucks to suck, and realistically, you shouldn't gain an advantage by not having a robot on the field. Yes, it's unfortunate when it happens, but
it does make me concerned, though. It makes me almost think of 2009. It's not quite as bad, but like when you had to have your trailer out there stationary and people could just dump into it without, I don't know what the right fix is, but I do think that is one kind of flaw with the end game.
Well, I mean, that extra ranking point in qualifications is so valuable. Like, I think in the elimination round, if you're playing 2-on-3, you're probably going to lose anyways, so it's not as big a thing. But man, in qualifications and the randomness of it all, when you have that partner who dies halfway through the match or doesn't make it to the field, it's just like, well, bye ranking point. So.
Yeah, it's tough, but on the other hand, you don't want to get in, because it is a ranking point in quals, and there's no way to really scale a ranking point other than making it worth 3 ranking points, which is just way too powerful. You don't want teams encouraging partners not to show up, right? Just send your human player and don't send your robot so we can get the ranking point because we don't trust you're going to last through the match.
Yeah,
and that's a terrible situation.
Yeah.
And so never be incentive to keep robots off the field.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's a tough game, and it's going to impact matches. But I think the way it is the best solution here.
Yeah, I think one of the things to remember is that not every alliance gets to be able to capture every match, right? It's not something you're guaranteed.
It's not even close.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and it should be a challenge. Not actually a challenge. It should be difficult, I suppose I should say. That's too many words. Okay.
No, it shouldn't be a challenge. It should be a capture.
So we're looking at so far 2.5% of all captures have occurred in qualifications, and that actually goes up to a quite astonishing 15.5% in defense in playoffs.
Interesting.
That's one number that's going to go up dramatically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not necessarily the qualification one, but the elimination one.
Yeah, we saw captures happening much more quickly this week compared to last week for sure. Even at events that there weren't really high powered robots, people putting balls in low goals, which kind of can we skip the next question? Not skip the next question. Can we spin really quick? Do you guys see first changing the capture value for district championships or the championships? Because I think they are. I think it might be a little low right now, maybe.
You think this is because I mean they've had this clause in the rule for a few years now, and they've never had to invoke it. And I kind of see it as it's in case of emergency break glass sort of thing.
True.
And I don't think we're going to be at that point because okay, so if it is low and everyone's capturing in the elims, the matches are going to be decided on who puts more balls into the tower. So it's it's not going to be as big of a thing, and so it's just going to be a normal shooting game. So
so to play kind of devil's advocate, would that affect whether or not the game becomes more or less interesting, or if capturing and breaching, which are these big significant parts for your ranking points, and then you go into qualification or you go into playoffs, and it's just the thing you have to get out of the way before you can decide who wins.
Yeah, I agreed. It definitely the emphasis on that is going to kind of if they really want to stick with the theming of this game, where capturing and breaching was supposed to be the central thing, and this weird flag on a solenoid pops up, then then you want to raise it so it is the pinnacle. But I think in terms of gameplay, if the game's just going to come down to who hits the most shots in the high goal at the end, I think that's still going to be a good game. I mean, what we saw it this weekend at East, where captures, it's basically a foregone. weakening the tower was a foregone conclusion.
Mhm.
You know, just getting your robots to get onto the batter, that was where the race is still, and that's not going to go away. The tower is going to get weakened, but like having that defense robot have to sneak back across the field, weave through traffic, get over that last defense, and get up there, and like that's still going to be part of the challenge. So I think that's not going to go away. So we're still going to have that last second excitement no matter what. So I think that even if the tower gets weakened with
17 that and 2013 that just shoot so hard that you wouldn't dare put anything up in front of them because it's not staying there.
I would have loved to see someone find the 2013 shot, see that robot get ripped to pieces. Like at one point, they turned, like their camera tracking was off. They turned in auto